I'm Steven.
And I'm Spencer. Welcome to Ragnarok Cast, your podcast for all things marketing and MarTech.
Hello, everyone. We're the co-CEOs of Ragnarok.
Welcome back to the Ragnarok Cast. Hi, I'm Spencer.
I'm Steven.
You probably already heard that in the intro, but here we are. And also, we have our friend Jordy here with us today.
That's right, Jordy K.
Hello.
That's how you go by, right, Jordy K?
Yeah. In my older years, that's what I've been referred to as. So I'm just laying into it.
Sometimes we call him the GK unit.
I was in middle school. I was G unit, and that was like the cringiest thing I could have done to myself as a boy from Montana.
Did you refer to yourself as that, or did someone else give you that nickname?
Somebody gave me the nickname, and I laid into it, but that doesn't really help the situation.
So in your internal monologue, you would say things like, G-Unit is pulling out a pencil from his pencil case.
Yeah, I go,
G-Unit.
G-Unit is crying on Halo 2.
Oh.
One of my nicknames was Fabio because I had really long hair.
I remember that.
I was not blonde, though. My hair was the same color as it is now. A few less
just
grays,
as handsome.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
So Ragnarok has been around since 2012, and we are essentially a group of marketing and MarTech stack consultants. We've been leading stack evaluations and implementations, integrations for quite a while. We've gathered two of our brightest minds when it comes to this thing, both Steven and Jordan. And so we're going to talk about how we actually make these recommendations and some tips and tricks that you marketers and other people.
There are only two types of people in the world.
Who else would
Marketers and
I want to
everyone
say,
else.
There are two types of people in the world: marketers and everybody else. And this is only for you, marketers. But everybody else can pause.
No one else is allowed to listen to the podcast. Turn it off right now.
If you were here for, I don't know, historical fiction, wrong spot.
If you're one of my parents that I told I was going to be on a podcast, get out of here. Jane, David.
Actually, I'd like to give a shout out to my dad. My dad's been listening to the podcast, and I think he's like the first listener every time.
Nice.
So
Nice.
shout out to Billy B.
Yeah, Billy.
Thanks for listening, Billy.
He's going to be so happy, by the way. We got to include that. Maybe we'll have him on sometime, just for funsies. We'll do a special episode.
We'll never get to talk the whole time, Spencer. You wonder where he gets it from.
Yeah. I'm quiet compared to my dad. So anyway, we want to give marketers, some tips and tricks on building their stack. We've gathered two of our brightest minds here that work on implementations daily. So that would be Steven and Jordan. I'll let you guys take it away after I ask the question, which I didn't realize there was a question.
Oh, question number one right there. But it has a duration of 5 minutes, so really ask that question, but stretch it out. Who is Jordan?
Who even am I? Yeah, so I'm a solutions architect at Ragnarok. To say that to put me in the same league as Steven is like comparing a JV basketball team to the NBA. But, I'm glad to be in the conversation.
Wow.
Been here for
you're at least varsity.
Oh, man. Let's go. I'm upgraded. Been here for about a year and a half. And I just try to make sure that implementations go smoothly and customers are happy using the partner platforms that we use every day.
So guys, SAs, both solution architects and Steven Aldrich's, why do we even need a stack in the first place? Why isn't there, a stack of tools? Why isn't there just one tool that does everything we need it to do?
Well, the analogy I always like to make is imagine you get one pancake instead of a stack of pancakes. Now, at the end of that one pancake, you're going to want another pancake. At the end of that stack of pancakes, you've eaten too many pancakes. So somewhere in between a small stack and more than one pancake, No, I'll remove that.
You lost me, man. Something with syrup and
Yeah.
I like what you're going for.
So
Yeah.
the
Making me
ironic
hungry.
thing is we used to have a single solution, right? And that was kind of the legacy platforms that sort of grew up. What ended up happening is sort of early on, we all had these different tools and it really connecting together. This is kind of early internet days when you're working in like, stuff that eventually Salesforce and Oracle would have bought up, where you would have a sort of separate database solution that was, kind of owned by this company. So an Oracle database or a Microsoft database. And there wasn't really a whole big kind of open application framework yet that existed. So it was really difficult to kind of build different solutions. You ended up having to kind of build them and then kind of add in like SQL databases and things to get them connected. It was a bit of a brutal world. And that's kind of where I grew up in my career, was working around trying to solve that like tech stack at the time.
I grew up in a brutal world.
There was so much internet just
Just
blossoming.
destruction raining from the sky. We got
Steven came out the
Salesforce.
mud.
So the marketing tools that people had were pretty limited in terms of what they could do, because you had to build all these like integrations and things to make it work, and everything was delayed and it was terrible. So what ended up happening is, the Oracles, the Salesforces of the world, they bought up these kind of point solutions and built them all into a cloud ecosystem. And that was great, right? For a week. And then it was bad. And the reason why is because it was just as bad when it wasn't integrated as it was when it was integrated into a cloud. They never actually completed the integration through and through to make it seamless. So essentially you had these businesses that kind of come out of that, like the Brazes, the Twilio Segments, the Movable Inks of the world, that essentially came out and said, well, I think we can do this better by focusing on solving this core problem and then making it really easy to send data in. So essentially think that you basically recreated what was already there, but you solved what was actually the core challenge, which was getting data in. And they did a very good job of that. Once you made it easy to put data in, you then sort of had a model that everybody else could adopt to, where they could say, oh, well, I'm not a marketing automation tool. I'm a CDP, or I'm a data warehouse, or I'm a MMP, or an analytics tool, any number of things. And so what ended up happening is you have these sort of point solutions that all ended up integrating with one another. And then all of a sudden you didn't need a cloud provider anymore. And that was great for a couple of things. I mean, one, primarily you didn't have to have these expansive contracts with cloud providers, plus all of the consulting fees that you would pay to integrate them and to try to run them. You could sort of use point solutions that were really good UIs and people could learn, and were much more easy to kind of adopt and string together. You had separate contracts, which not great for enterprise level businesses, but sort of in that mid to and lower market, a lot easier to kind of navigate that. And so you ended up having sort of cheaper rates that you're paying across the board. And then lastly, you sort of had this opportunity to customize what you wanted based on a partner that was maybe more vertical centric for you, or had a little bit more experience with your type of use cases. So if you're households versus B2C versus B2B, you could have very specific use cases around that.
And Jordan, how do you feel about Steven calling marketing mid?
I guess no opinion.
But what's your take on that? What do you think?
I think Steven put that pretty beautifully, and it gave like a really great like holistic approach. If I want to really like dumb it down and just kind of from my point of view, the biggest thing for businesses to have these like tech stacks and things like that does seem to be, those one size fits all solutions. Those don't truly exist, at least from my perspective. Where you'll see things that like CDPs that can do a lot of really interesting stuff with your data, but when it comes to kind of like the end result being sending sort of like email messages or like handling SMS, things like that, the functionality that comes packaged with those offerings tends to be lacking because they do data super, super well, right? So you're looking at having like a CDP on top of like, or that feeds data into a CRM or something like that, so you can really get the most out of your data, and they kind of like get the best out of each other, without breaking the bank, like Steven said.
So there are a number of, at this point, historically best in breed tech companies that are now like in their own small way adding on things, and it's not necessarily like the Salesforce Oracle model where they're buying up things and adding it to themselves, but they are adding on like things that are not necessarily their specialty and kind of overlapping more and more with companies they would typically not come up against. So like basically CDPs, ESPs, analytics, etc., sort of all adding on stacking on other elements of this, and sort of like Frankensteining this new thing together. Whereas before it might have been like a more pure best in breed. Now it's sort of maybe somewhat more holistically than like buying another company, but they are diluting it in terms of the original purpose and adding on all these other features. Have you guys seen any, is that still too newer, but have you seen any pros or cons to any of those kind of tools?
For sure. Again, I'm not going to name specifics or anything like that. But we are working with a client now that has like a really robust like CDP system that has kind of a journey offering, which is basically used for them to send emails and things like that. And from a user's perspective or a user experience perspective, it's just been a hassle where, you know, you could use something from another platform, which again, not going to name specifics, but there are other platforms that are much more user friendly that could do the same thing that this other platform offers, but much easier and much cleaner. So that's one situation where, you know, it would be nice to recommend to them something to kind of handle that sending facilitation or something along those lines.
Yeah, to add into that, so there are some companies that are, you know, buying other tools, so to speak. You know, like I like to think of like the mParticle example, buying Fedora, which is a, you know, sort of an AI complement to what they do. And that sort of adjacency is net improving what they do from a CDP perspective. I don't think they're really competing with, I mean, they're somewhat competing, but they're sort of adding in an additional kind of capability into their stack that feels a little bit more natural to what they do. Kind of a similar example with like Heap and Replay, kind of adding in that functionality to like further enhance the analytics, where you're not necessarily like departing from what your core strength is. And then you kind of look at the flip side of that and you look at somebody like Mixpanel, who had push messaging and things like that kind of built into their platform. And then they basically cut that off because it was so not adjacent to what they were doing, because they wanted to be a core product analytics platform. So I think there definitely is some like sequencing of things, or the sequence of how they integrate these different tools is definitely important. But there are some people who are really doing it right. But to your point, Spencer, there's definitely quite a few that are kind of moving more into that cloud ecosystem, which they're definitely doing it a lot better because they're using more modern technology, so to speak, compared to what's been out there. But potentially that, you know, the idea there is they're hoping maybe to pick up more of the incremental opportunity from their clients, but they might not necessarily be the best at it. And they might be several years off from even having, you know, enough feature parity with, say, somebody who's best in breed right now in that space.
Yeah, I mean, we're only starting to see this in the past year with, you know, quite a few companies in like the product and marketing space, like MarTech, that are adding on these things that are not normally in their scope. And so we can't say whether they're good or bad yet because it's all too nascent. But it sounds like generally what you're saying, though, that like when a best in breed tool can still be considered best in breed if it's investing in or buying another company that's deepening what they're already good at and just expanding on that. And they still remain best in breed. All right. So to get back to the to the schedule, and this is a very open-ended question. Feel free to interpret it in your own way. But when you're consulting with a client on what their tech stack should be and how you implement it and what other tools you should bring in, like how long does this process typically take? You know, for maybe each of you guys can just sort of give an example or your thoughts on it. I think it's very likely there's someone that's going to listen to this that's going through the process of trying to figure this out. And it is a time investment. What is the range and can you give me like a bullet points of the things that really make it easier or more complex, like ways that they can make it easier on themselves when they go through this process?
Yeah, for sure. I think it all starts in having very definitive, clearly defined use cases. Like, what is it you want to do? Who's the target that you want to activate on, and what is the intended, asset or thing that you want to maneuver. So whether it's I want to send these 15 emails and I want to welcome series and abandoned cart, or I want to do progressive profiling on my website, or I want to gather push tokens from the app, be able to send push notifications. Like all of those have to just be documented somewhere and stated, right? And, with a lot of our clients that we worked with, especially when we're doing things like CDP implementations, there are like 80 to 90 use cases that people end up with if they're being really comprehensive on what's included in their entire like ecosystem and their desired marketing output. Mm-hmm. So if you're writing those down and you have like 8, you're probably not thinking comprehensively enough about it. And that can really help alleviate a lot of the pain further on, because that's what a lot of a consultant's going to ask you is try to dig into like, what are actually all of your use cases? Because we can always prioritize what to start with so we can build value out of the platform. But you should always have in your vision, what does this thing look like when it's done? And that has to include all of those use cases. And again, like, as I said, if there's 80 in there, you're probably closer to the right track. If you have like 8 or 10 or 15 or 20, unless you're really kind of early in your brand's existence, you're probably missing a lot. And so that's where you want to be a little bit more broad and deep about what you actually want to accomplish.
I was going to also say, I'm going full oink here because we're piggybacking again. Understanding your data is like a huge asset, especially when you're going into like a net new implementation. So understanding your data is like super valuable, especially for something that's like net new, and understanding how your data flows across your tech stack. At least understanding like where to find certain bits of information and how that's going to like interact in those use cases, like Steven was saying, that can save you an incredible amount of time. Because when it comes to like researching and trying to understand where things are coming from, when you have a outside source coming in and start poking around, it can be very time consuming.
How time consuming are we saying?
Yeah. So generally most folks should plan like to get the tool integrated, and like 3 or 4 of your top use cases. Usually we say 90 to 120 days is probably the best like average time frame to use. Now, some people can get that done in 2 weeks. Some people get it done in 6 weeks. Again, it depends on how prescriptive you are and how much support you get from your team. From there, it's generally, I would say, probably 12 to 18 months to be completely fully done, to be in that place where you're in a done state. And you're building off of that, and everything's kind of incremental. And just because at the end of the day, you're fighting for resources, you need engineers to build the integrations, you need hands-on staff to actually go in and create the assets within the platform to actually execute against. You might have other things that don't yet exist, and you're waiting for that data to be created at the source. So it generally takes a while, but if you're not deriving value after 4 months, you got to pick up the pace, so to speak. Like the thing should be paying for itself within 4 months.
So under 4 months is really what you're looking at.
Definitely to get
Ideally.
the primary use cases, yeah. To the point where you're generating more revenue than what the platform costs.
Yeah. Cool. Ideally, everything gets set up properly in a timely manner. How important is it to get it right the first time? Like, you have to get everything right, or yeah.
It will save you a lot of headache if you do, or if you put a lot of thought into what that like architecture looks like and how things are all kind of connected together. Again, we kind of talked about this a little bit before, but having something to kind of like unify your data across your stack, like it still kind of blows my mind that when you start bringing up like external IDs or like a universal identifier to like track users across your ecosystem, it is a foreign concept to more people than I would have thought. To give a little background, like I came from Ragnarok from a company that built government software, and I was kind of spoiled there where everything had a unique identifier, and it could be easily tied back to either your customer or their account or something like that. And I figured that was just kind of standard, especially like getting right out of school and trying to understand like, how to pull data together. So it's not the end of the world if you can't get it right 100% on the first time. Like there's a lot of tools out there and a lot of approaches that you can take to transform your data or kind of right the ship if you really need to. But it is so much easier if you put a lot of thought into it in those initial phases.
Right on. And I actually makes me think of some. So writing a ship can be expensive for sure if you and not necessarily because you made a wrong decision, but sometimes making that wrong decision is because you picked the wrong tool or you thought you had capability that it actually didn't because maybe somebody had a really good sales presentation and they pulled the wool over your eyes. So in that case, pivoting is probably better because you're actually going to derive value out of the tool. I would say in some cases we've worked with, kind of thinking of one of the clients that we've worked with where they moved from a sort of marketing automation tool to kind of one of these all-in-one like CDP, marketing automation, CRM type tools with some recommendations capability built into it. And what they were really excited about is the ability to do the recommendations and deploy that across a lot of their templates. And they specifically do like content articles and things like that. So it's not products even, it was more of a media play. And, by consolidating essentially two different tools, they thought they would save a lot of money. They get into the tool, they start integrating. What they find out is that the tool can't handle the scale of what they're trying to do. It's not customizable to what they need to be able to do. So they've done, years, essentially what amounts to, 2 years of work kind of de-integrating and integrating to a new tool, and then essentially deciding to cut their losses and go back to their old tool and then having to reintegrate all over again because essentially what they thought they were going to get, they actually didn't get. And so a lot of ways that you can kind of, I guess, get a view into whether or not it's going to work is we always encourage POCs or proof of concepts. If you can get them out of your partners or out of your tools that you're evaluating, we also recommend that you kind of narrow them down. You give them a literal, like, this is what I want to achieve. Again, kind of going back to that use case doc and saying, like, this is exactly what I want to achieve. Can you bring a solution engineer or somebody on the call who can walk me through exactly how this will work? And then that will give you a little bit more of that visibility to say, like, wow, that's a lot of running around that I have to do to get this one thing to turn on. You might be able to see which tools natively support this type of feature that you're looking for a lot easier than, say, the one that maybe looks better from a pitch standpoint. But, when you actually get into the back end there, it's a bunch of disconnected wires and things are sparking everywhere. So it's always one of those opportunities, after you get burned, to just be a little bit more cautious before you put your hand back on the stove.
We don't want any fires starting in the basement.
No, sir.
No, we don't want.
Why is there a stove in the basement?
Listen, Jordan. Okay, Ragnarok was started.
Okay. Real story. True story. During Hurricane Sandy, I was in New York and was standing on a stoop, and I looked to the left. The water hadn't gotten all the way up to it was like 4 steps up off the sidewalk, but the water was pretty high and it was actually going into the basement. The basement was half flooded, and it reached. I was looking into the basement area because it's like a subterranean ground floor thing, but that's where all the breakers were, and the electricity from the breaker, whoever put the breakers in the basement, and it was terrible fire waiting to happen. Basically, electrical fire happened, and there was just flames billowing out until the water got so high that it just submerged everything underwater. But the best part about this, and has nothing to do with anything, guys, by the way, is I'm not making this up. I'm looking and I'm watching this electrical fire happen, and I look off to the left. Is Hurricane Sandy, right? Like everything was flooded. This was on 93rd Street for anybody that knows New York. East 93rd Street. I look towards First Avenue, and it's like a giant river basically at this point. And there's one of those flatbed trucks. There's a giant flatbread, and apparently I was on mushrooms. No, it's a flat. There was a flatbed truck floating up First Avenue, very slowly like this, and there's a dude on the back, just party boying by himself, in the middle of a hurricane on the back of a flatbed truck. And it was amazing. Also, one other thing, I really wanted to tell somebody this story. I saw a lady get crashed into on the bike lane today by a guy skateboarding in a full Spider-Man costume. He came out of nowhere, and he like T-boned her, like literally, like he was coming out of nowhere, and he just like went into the bike lane, and they went like flying through the air.
Wait, did he like web out his hands and like right himself
No,
right
no,
away,
no,
or
no.
he
He fell
crashed and burned?
right on his face.
So he was not a real Spider-Man.
No, he's not a real Spider-Man.
I thought they stopped doing that Spider-Man musical because stuff like this kept happening.
Yeah. Yeah, this is what he does for fun now.
He's out of a job.
They turned off the lights permanently.
Can I just say, piggybacking Into the Spider-Verse, Spider-Pig, best character. Just throwing it out there.
We're going full oink on this episode.
We're going
That's
full
right.
oink
I can't
all
stop
the way.
thinking.
Gonna get myself some pulled pork sandwich after this one.
I'm gonna get that on a t-shirt, and then I also have to get I'm ready to truck, or it's time to truck.
Oh yeah.
I'm never gonna let you forget it. It's so good. That was off of a meeting.
It was one of our clients was advertising in a video game, and but the video game's like a truck simulator, and so I was saying so I went and bought the simulator, and I was like, now I'm ready, like I'm gonna get my hat on, like my trucker hat, and it's gonna say I'm ready to truck on it, and yeah, I was so terrible at the game though. Like I really should never drive a truck, is what I've learned, because
So you'll never be a licensed forklift driver, is what you're saying?
Forklift might be a little bit okay. It was the back of the truck, it just swings too much. It's really hard not to hit other cars when you're making left turns. And I prefer Grand Theft Auto over this. So
were you that guy that uses the fast lane? That one trucker that uses the fast lane? I knew it was you.
Oh man.
Anyway, guys, I gotta round us up here. I gotta corral us back to the ranch. I'm the sheepdog, and I'm bringing all the sheeps home.
Or the piglets.
I'm a pig dog, and I'm wrangling. All right, boys, back in your pen. Back in your pen.
You sound like a high school bully.
Someone tried to put me into a locker once, but the locker wasn't big enough, so they just kind of gave up. And they stopped bothering me after that because I think they embarrassed themselves. But
that's the way to beat your bully. Just be too big for them.
Listen, man, I'm sorry, it's not going to work. It's just not going to happen today, bud. Okay, so we're gonna bring this back to the ranch. I'd like to just to sum up, basically, everyone, just on a serious note, or semi-serious. Building a tech stack doesn't have to be scary. A MarTech tech stack in this particular instance, just be prepared beforehand. You can get it done in a few months. With the right team and the right preparation. While the all-in-one solutions can seem, like a godsend, a lot of the newer ones are really untested. A lot of this stuff is still in the roadmap, beta phase. So try it out if you want, but I would say, based on our experience, the best in breed way is the way to go, because these are teams that are built around, their whole company, their whole team's oriented around building the best possible product experience for that specific thing that you're trying to get them to do. So it's kind of like, do you want to go, broad and shallow, or just like with an all-in-one solution, or do you want to just bring together tools that hopefully integrate together or can be integrated together to really get the best possible outcome?
Yeah. And you can always upgrade later too. You don't have to you can always buy the broad, knowing that your team maybe can't quite use all the sophisticated bells and whistles, but 2 years down the line, you might say to yourself, all right, well, I'm ready to move on. I'm ready to buy the Cadillac,
Ooh, very nice. Cadillac. So that's a nice transition. I'd like to shout out to my dad, Billy B, for being such a great listener.
Thanks,
He's
Billy.
also a big Cadillac fan, as well as a Ragnarok Cast fan. And I'd like to thank Jordan, Jordy K, for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, guys.
And if you're going through a tech stack evaluation and you're looking for a sheet to sort of like a template to do a comparison against different partners that you're evaluating, we have some good standards and templates that we can share with you as well that will help you in your making sure that you're thinking through all the different parts of bringing on a new partner.
And now it's time for my NPR voice.
There
Everyone,
he is.
please like us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Threads, other platforms that we're on that I don't know about. And also, please, most importantly, subscribe to our podcast on whatever platform you're using. That's all.
Wherever you get your podcast.
Oh, I like that. All right, everybody. Hang in there until next time.
This has been Ragnarok Cast. Yeah!